Satnam, what's going on, everybody? Good to be connecting with you today. I hope you're doing well. All right, look forward to getting into this video, which is going to be covering the specific Vedic astrology or the Jyotish happenings that are most pertinent to the month of February. Again, my intention with these monthly videos is to really just give you some insights and really the highlight takeaways from the particular patterns and the particular energies that are moving during the course of this month. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out to me. And specifically, if you're able to, I would really encourage you to actually try and utilize some of the different remedial measures that I'll be offering as a part of this video, because it's one thing to have the intellectual knowledge and the information. That's all great and definitely is a wonderful starting place. But really, again, the essence of Vedic astrology and all of the core wisdom traditions of the Vedic tradition, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's yoga, meditation, is actually the personal application and integration in your life with the knowledge. So having an understanding is great, but again, having an actual relationship personally with these forces as they're moving through you and in your life is really, to me, what makes this such a rich science as well as an art and an alchemy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up a little presentation to kind of give us the play-by-play. So again, this is February 2023. Let's take a look and see what we got going on in the forecast. All right, so here's what we have at the beginning of the month here today on February 1st. So a couple important things to begin with. We have the sun currently in the constellation, in the sign of Capricorn. So you can see that in the little chart. Number 10 is Capricorn. Each of these numbers has to do with one of the 12 signs of the zodiac, 1 being Aries, 2 being Taurus, 3 being Gemini, and so on, all the way up until number 12, which is Pisces. So the sun is in Capricorn, and this is very important for a number of reasons. Capricorn is ruled by the planet Saturn. And if we look at the 7 chakras in the body, the sign of Capricorn and the planet Saturn is actually connected to our Muladhara, our root chakra at the base of our spine. It's connected to the earth element. So the root chakra has a lot to do with our security, our stability, and just kind of the substance of our psyche, the deepest part of our nature. And the sun is a connection to our ego, to our identity. And so, this idea of just being in touch with the root chakra, being in touch with your own identity, with the needs that you have in your life to feel safe, to feel secure, the sort of base necessities of living, is kind of an energetic that is at play right now. So, having some kind of a daily discipline, whether it's meditation, whether it's journaling, whether it's spending time in nature, spending time alone in contemplation, very, very important from a stabilizing energetic. And this is going to come into play in greater detail as the month goes on. But just something to really be in tune with is, what are the structures that you have in your life, in your routine, in your home, with your body. Having some kind of groundedness is going to be really important for this month in particular. At the same time, we have Saturn, the planet, in Aquarius, which I mentioned last month, is huge, that Saturn has finally moved into Aquarius after about 2.5, 3 years of being in Capricorn. This is a big energetic shift. And Saturn is very, 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 very strong in the sign of Aquarius, which it rules, which also has to do with the root chakra. And Saturn as a planet is a very airy planet. In Ayurveda, it would be connected with what we call Vata dosha. And Vata is wonderful in terms of prana, energy, life force. However, the important thing with Vata is to make sure that, again, it has proper containment, proper boundary, proper structures. And so, again, this theme is just a very, very important one, because discipline in the daily actions that we take really are what dictate kind of how imbalance or out of balance that airy energetic in our life can be. So Saturn in Aquarius is very important. And what's nice in this month is that we have Venus, the planet of Venus, in Aquarius at the beginning of the month with Saturn. And Venus is going to be a very important planet in this month as well. And Venus is connected to the heart chakra, the Anahata chakra. And Venus as a planet is very connected to the element of water. And so water too is going to be a very important element in this month to bring in compassion, to bring in feeling, to bring in love, to bring in devotion, prayerful type of an open-hearted energy. That in and of itself is going to bring so much softness and fluidity and lubrication to kind of this otherwise very airy forecast that is kind of in the mix. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. Otherwise, Mercury is in Sagittarius and Mars is in Taurus. The nice thing with this month is that both of those planets were retrograde last month, and they're now back to being direct. So the kind of flow of their energies is more predictable, more stable, which thank God for that. And then Jupiter is in its own house of Pisces. Jupiter rules Pisces. And again, this is going to be a very important sign in this month, and it's going to continue to accentuate this really watery energetic that is available to us this month. All right, so moving ahead just a little bit. Now, February 5th, I'm pretty excited for. Personally, I think this is going to be a very, very, very nice day. The reason being is that we're going to be having a full moon taking place in the constellation of Cancer. The moon rules Cancer. So anytime there's a full moon in Cancer, it's a beautiful thing because the moon feels cozy, it feels safe, it feels secure. And the moon has everything to do with our emotional nature, with our minds, with our feelings. And Cancer is a watery sign. The moon is a watery planet. So we had this nice combination of water and water together. So yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very sweet full moon. The moon is in a great position in Cancer. It has no negative energetics that are affecting it. It has a positive energetic that is uplifting it. Jupiter is actually having a very strong influence into this full moon. So it's like the sweet taste in Ayurveda. It's just very nourishing. It helps to build our tissues and to kind of build our internal sense of fulfillment, satisfaction. So yeah, this should be a very, very uplifting, sweet full moon. Really one of the better full moons in the upcoming few months. And what's cool about this full moon is that if you work with the more subtle energetics of the zodiac, this full moon is happening in a constellation known as Ashlesha. Ashlesha. And Ashlesha is represented by the deity Sarpa. And Sarpa is the serpent. It's the Kundalini life force for yogis that are in touch with the subtle energy of the spine. But the serpent also has a destructive potential of being mischievous, kind of cunning, can deceive us. So that's the only thing to be aware of with all this beautiful full moon energy is what are we putting that into? You know, is it being used for positive? Is it being used for destructive? And again, this has a lot to do with relationships. You know, Cancer is a very relational type of a sign. And so being very, you know, giving and loving in one's relationships, especially, is going to be kind of heightened during this full moon, energetic in particular, I would say. Should be great. Should be a real nice one. A nice mantra, if you would like to use it during this full moon, you can practice meditation mantras for each of the planets. You can do a meditation mantra for the moon, and that mantra, you can do it out loud, you can do it silently, you can do it both ways, is Om Som Somaye Namaha. Om Som Somaye Namaha. It really accentuates the qualities of the moon. The moon has a very motherly type of an energy. It's a very, again, tender, kind of compassionate, energetic. You might want to, you know, wear some colors that are connected to the moon. Color white in particular is a beautiful color to also tune in with the energetics and heighten the higher frequencies of the moon. Go out and look at it, you know, soak in some of the energetics. It's very sattvic, it's very uplifting to the consciousness. And it's very cooling also to the nervous system and to the body. It helps to balance out what we would call, you know, a pitta type of imbalance or too much of a fiery energetic. Again, it's that watery, earthy sweetness. That being said, you know, the next day I think might be a little bit more challenging, which again is the nature of the moon. It's the nature of our emotions. It ebbs and flows, it waxes and it wanes. And so this next day, the moon is going to move into the constellation of Leo. And in this position, unfortunately, it's going to be under some more challenging influences from the planet Mars, as well as Saturn. And it's kind of losing the nice influence of Jupiter that it had while it was in Cancer. So again, this is a time just to be really tender to oneself, to nourish oneself, and to be aware of sort of the excess fire and air tendencies that might start to arise in one's emotional nature without proper containment, without proper pacification. So again, just be aware and, you know, take the remedial measures as necessary. No big deal. We ride the waves. It's all good. All right, moving on. So February 13th, I think this is going to be kind of a very interesting sort of transitional period that we're going to be moving into for the next few days. So the sun will be moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And this is important because, again, Saturn's influence is very strong in Aquarius. It's kind of like its home turf, if you will. It's kind of got the home field advantage. And the sun and Saturn as planets do not get along with one another. They are considered to be enemies of each other. So there's going to be a little bit of a conflicting energy that's going to be happening between the sun and between Saturn for the rest of the month of February. And so being aware of this, you know, again, Saturn really teaches us discipline. It teaches us detachment. A lot of times it can bring difficulty and struggle. That's kind of Saturn's nature. Is it's a tough teacher. It's not really sweet and kind like Jupiter or the moon. It's more stern. It's more cold. Um, but it purifies us. And that's the thing with Saturn, is that it's like the bitter taste in Ayurveda. It doesn't taste good going down, but it's so good for the system and for cleaning things out that need to be eliminated. So, things might come up the rest of this month around, again, things related to ego, identity, sense of self. Um, and so, just be present to those things. But again, always falling back to your sadhana, always falling back to some practices that can really anchor the consciousness in a deeper way than just kind of the outer attachments. That's really what's going to be being brought up, especially between the Sun and Saturn. Thankfully, Venus is in there, so Venus's energy, which is more loving and beautiful, is going to soften things to a degree, and that's really important. Is that whatever your sadhana, whatever your practice may be, making sure to bring in love to it. To not just be going through the motions, to not just be checking the box. Yeah, we have to do our practices, but again, turning it into more of a devotion, into more of a loving practice will again just really help to soften things up a little bit. And there is an interesting relationship too that's going to be happening for the rest of this month, specifically between the Sun and Saturn as it pertains to the signs that they rule, which are Aquarius for Saturn and Leo with the Sun. And again, these are oppositional type of signs. And so there's this kind of dance that's going to be going on between the Sun, which is, again, just very solar, very radiant, very warm, and Saturn, which tends to be a little bit more aloof, a little bit more cold, a little bit more detached. And so, again, this is just a polarity of energies that's at play, at this particular stage. Just be aware. Again, whatever that means to you, you can explore that for yourself and just be present to them and see how they express themselves in your life. Moving forward, though, pretty excited for February 15th. I think this is going to be a really beautiful stretch that's going to carry out the whole rest of the month of February. Venus will be moving out of Aquarius and it will be moving into Pisces. This is very, very, very significant, and I would say very, very, very positive. So, Pisces is a sign and Jupiter as a planet is very connected to the second chakra, Svadhisthana chakra. And the second chakra has a lot to do with sensuality, has a lot to do with pleasure, has a lot to do with creativity. It has a lot to do with interpersonal relationships and communication to a degree as well, expression. And when Jupiter and Venus come together like this in Pisces, that is a huge, huge, huge swell of that water element in the second chakra. And the fourth chakra, because Venus is connected to the fourth chakra. So love and pleasure, devotion and creativity, interpersonal relationships and harmony. They're both very benefic planets. They tend to be very expansive in their energy, and they really have this creative potential. In Ayurveda, Venus is called Shukra, and Shukra is the reproductive force. It's the semen in men, and it's the egg or the ovum in the female. And so Shukra, while it is about giving birth to children biologically, it's also about giving birth to endeavors, ideas, projects. And so using this life force, oh my gosh, it's just so available right now to be put into something of meaning. At the same time, the important thing to be aware of is that these energies have the potential to take us into excess, to take us into indulgence, and to take us into pleasure in potentially a more destructive form, whether that's in gluttony, whether that's in sexuality, whether that is in, greed, not as much greed, I would say in this case, but more some kind of a sense pleasure, sexuality, quite frankly, in particular, an excessive indulgence in whatever form that may be. So just be aware of that tendency that will also be very, very present. And again, all things in moderation, all things in balance, no right, no wrong. But yeah, Venus is going to be moving towards what they call exaltation. So the whole rest of the month, Venus is getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And so again, that's a beautiful thing because Venus is all about love in the highest form, devotion in the highest form, the feminine energetic in the highest form, refinement in the highest form, art in the highest form. So all of these heightened qualities of Venus are going to be so, so, so magnified. But again, just don't get caught up in the allure that Venus presents. That's the danger of Venus, is like being caught in a spider's web and not even really knowing it until it's too late, because we've kind of been wrapped up in something and more attached to something. Venus has this illusory appeal to it if it's followed in the lowest form. But again, that's where those disciplines of Saturn actually really come into play, is having those practices, and things that kind of anchor us back into our deeper sense of self. So yeah, this Venus Jupiter energy, I'm personally very, very excited for it. Venus is very strong in my chart, and both Venus and Jupiter also have so much to do with wisdom. They're kind of considered to be the teacher of the gods, Jupiter, and also the teacher of the demons, which is Venus. So they have a lot of wisdom energy as well to them if they're in proper proportions. But this day too, in particular, could have some intense emotional energetics. The moon is going to be again back in a very difficult position in the zodiac. So with all of this watery energetics, just be aware again of potential overflow of emotions, or lethargy, or procrastination. Things of that nature are going to be also heightened, especially on this day. Then moving ahead a couple days, we've got a new moon that's going to be happening in the constellation of Aquarius. And I think this is going to be a challenging new moon, personally. Again, Saturn's influence is very strong in this new moon, which can be difficult. It can, again, be more of a bitter type of a medicine. And this full moon is happening in a very interesting constellation known as Shatabishak. It means 100 medicines. And it has a lot to do with atonement. It has a lot to do with deliverance. But it's a challenging constellation. It has more of a we would say a demonic, even sort of an influence, which isn't a happy term, but the opportunity it's presenting is to expand one's consciousness. And that again is where Saturn comes into play, as a planet of discipline, a planet of regularity, a planet of not letting our senses and our pleasures get the better of us. So to me, that's a big influence. It's at play right now with everything we were talking about with Venus and Jupiter, is to not let it grip us too hard. And again, bringing in devotion, bringing in love, bringing in reverence, that really helps to offset some of that more difficult Saturn type of an energy. So just be aware. Again, I think the full moon earlier in this month, like I said, I cannot be better. This new moon's a little bit more difficult. So just be easy, be tender on yourself. And then lastly, I won't get too much into this, but this is just a snapshot of what the end of the month is going to look like here as we get ready to close out and move into March. And we'll cover that more when the time comes. But yeah, all in all, I think this month is going to be really, really cool. I think last month had some more difficult challenges to it with all the retrograde activity and kind of the closing out of Saturn's time in Capricorn. But I think with Venus's heightened energy this month, and just kind of the opportunity again is really just the word, the opportunity for being in touch with one's identity uh, is going to offer a lot. So that's the forecast for February. As always, if you have questions, if I can support you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. And until next time, Satnam.